Welcome to Santa Cruz Guitar Company. I'm Richard Hoover, and today we're going to talk about not only my reverence for this wonderful material, redwood, but its practical application in acoustic guitar. And we're going to learn why it's so cool, so desirable, and so versatile. So come on with me. I'll tell you all about it. Today we're gonna bust some myths about redwood. We're going to differentiate between opinion and science. And those of you that know me, I always start out with that caveat. I'm going to give you the results of scientific inquiry, the laws of physics. The internet is a great place for opinions, but I won't go into opinion unless I warn you first. And there's a lot of folklore about redwood in a guitar, and it's really interesting because it mimics the same thing that was said about cedar in the Spanish tradition going back a couple of generations. When Ramirez introduced cedar in a classical guitar, his contemporaries dismissed it as being limited in its tonal range without headroom and not having a long tonal life, that it would fall short after years, it would lose its tone, and that it was not really complex. This was all when it was first used by Ramirez, with nobody having experience. It was a macho thing. It really was a dismissal of a non-traditional thing because we really don't like change unless it's our own idea. And they were being party poopers with no solid basis. We find out today that cedar is a real desirable thing in the most professional musical instruments, or classical guitars, I should say. So let's come to the modern day, and we're hearing the same thing about redwood and acoustic. It's no coincidence that people have borrowed from that, because you hear something, you repeat it, and it becomes the law. So what we've found through serious scientific inquiry, some of you may know about our modal analysis. It's not a luthier thing. It's a Stanford University Naval Postgraduate School cooperation, where we can really capture, I'm going to call them the properties. Don't be mistaken by calling them qualities, because they're not. They're going to lead to personal choices here. These are properties or quantities that we find in the wood. And I'll go into that in a minute, but I'm going to show you here. First, we've been making redwood top guitars for about 40 years. So we have a good sample, and we have a good test of its longevity as we go there. There is quite a range with any wood. You take the name of the wood, there's quite a range in between there. The stuff you'd never use on both ends of the spectrum. But within that, within redwood, there's the best possible tone wood for a guitar. It's a bold statement, but we can scientifically prove that. Again, it's not my opinion. So as we look at some of these woods, I have samples of the coolest, biggest names in redwood. This is Tunnel 13, and it's super crazy bright and clear. Let's go to another extreme here. This is redwood that tumbled naturally into the San Lorenzo that runs right here by our shop, way up in a higher elevation, was lodged in the glacial boulders for a few hundred years before it broke free in a big storm, washed out to sea, and came back up. And let's see, we've got some crackosis in here that may absorb a little of our sound, but let's listen anyway. That's a laugh, right? It's like a cracked bell. Okay, a little warmer in tone. I'll give you a comparison here quickly. Bright and clear. A little less so. And then this is another sample of this San Lorenzo redwood. where we're even warmer. And finally, this is what we call the Great Notion from up near the Klamath River. That is a Great Notion because it came from the area where Ken Kesey's novel, Sometimes the Great Notion, happened. And this is even warmer in tone. So which one's better? Which one's worse? That's not how it works. There's no best piece of wood for guitar making. There's a piece of wood that's best for the sound you're making for a customer. And what that is, to debunk a myth, it's the scale of clarity, from warm blended to bright, clear, articulate. And on that scale is your choice for your style of playing. Let's say often bluegrass, singer-songwriter, rhythm. People don't want a crisp, clear, articulate sound. They want a more warm, blended response. The other end of the scale, you have a jazz fingerstyle where the player wants you to hear every note they play separately and all the nuance that goes into that. And that requires a bright, clear, articulate wood. And as you saw this, you go through these samples, you heard that variety of stuff. There's no better or worse, but there certainly is one right piece of wood for this guitar we're making for this player. And this where it comes into the science. The modal analysis of this wood shows us that redwood really has the broadest application of appropriate application for acoustic guitars of any other wood, including the prize spruces. And that's how we approach our custom guitar making. Again, I'll be redundant. We're not picking the best wood for all guitars. We're picking the best wood for this guitar. As I said, we have some famous woods here. That Tunnel 13, Lucky Strike. We have the Lost Tunnel, the Fort Ross Redwood, and then like just miraculously wood from our own river that came down. They're really equal in value because we know, again, this modal analysis tells us things like, let's cut to the quick. I learned from violin making because when I started there was nothing out there on steel string guitar making. And that's taking a piece of wood and through feeling its flexibility that way, this way, and then listening for how quickly, how much velocity, how quickly the sound goes through it. Its propensity for clarity or warmness. I'm going to call that tone not to be confused with EQ, which is the balance of bass versus treble versus mid-range. And for the most part, it's mythology that the piece of wood determines the EQ in the guitar, although it does affect it. And in this modal analysis, we are actually getting the propensity for low, mid, and high frequency response. And we're looking more for that relationship and balance when we go to make a guitar for bluegrass, where you want a heavy bass versus jazz or classical, where the player would want it very even and choose the volume themselves as they go. So we're going to come up with the right wood for the right guitar. Some of this beautiful stuff like Lucky Strike, Tunnel 13 is gone. We've used it up. But those are the ones that got the most noise. This is not plentiful. It's super well protected. It's really hard to get access to it. And it takes a knowledgeable system to determine what the good stuff is. But the point is, there's just as good wood that's unnamed as there is in the most popular ones that are iconic. And we're so lucky to get this wood from the San Lorenzo River, again, that came down the river in maybe 2000, but had been lodged for 300 years, and in the living tree for probably 1,500 years. It's not only a cool story and ended up our backyard, but it's some of the coolest stuff we've found for responsiveness, independent of that scale of clarity. So this is something that we're using now, a limited supply, but it'll be fun while it lasts. And then the great notion wood from the Klamath, which I was also talking about. And this is, these are trees that would have been cut post-World War II, some tumbling into the Klamath River, some through natural causes. But again, many, many years old and super cool stuff. Let's give you a little bit of physics here. One of the reasons that old guitars and old violins sound better, independent of mythology like playing or whatever, is that the resins in the wood polymerize once the tree dies. Polymerization is like glue drying. But the point is, it gets harder and harder and harder and more resonant over time, whether it's in a guitar, a violin, under a river, in an inventory of an old boat builder, it's going to get better sounding. So that's the huge benefit of using this reclaimed stuff, is it just sounds better already. We cheat. We make an old sounding guitar with a new piece of wood. The other part of it is dear to my heart, which is responsible harvest. The ability to not cut a living tree to get this stuff. And it's not a judgment. It's a way to get the best possible sounding guitar. And that is expensive. You wouldn't expect the larger company to do this because their value to you is making a guitar at an affordable range. It's a beautiful thing. So with this, understand that redwood, again, has the widest range. That doesn't mean that one redwood top can be good for everything. It means that one redwood top would have an application in a specific style of playing that would be absolutely the best. So I hope that helps with debunking some of the mythology. I'd like to take a second and talk about what it means to me. I grew up in the middle of the San Joaquin Valley between Fresno and Bakersfield, and it was an hour and a half to get up into Yosemite, the crazy beautiful nature, and the tall redwoods. And I took every opportunity I could to be there. I have memories, some of my earliest memories as a child was looking up through the boughs of the trees on a starry night and having my first, let's just call it out-of-body experience, where I hope to think everybody's had this once or twice, where everything fell into place. It all made sense for a minute, till we go back to our regular day. But that memory allows you to navigate the hairy questions of life, all the noise you go through. But that gave me a great reverence for that material. I'd never dream of cutting a live whitewood tree to do that. The Aboriginal people in the Northwest, there's a mistaken intent for us, modern society to think that they worship the trees. Far from it. They held them in reverence because they represented the work of the Creator. Lightning strikes, it burns down, it regenerates, it grows again. The wood has 7 chromosomes versus the 4 that are in every other wood. Something special going on here. It also doesn't have a taproot that allows it to live singularly. The roots spread out, connect with the other trees that give it more of a foundation to keep from blowing down in wind, and they communicate. This is science. This isn't like woo-woo stuff that I made up. They communicate to share nutrients, to repel pests. They're worthy of respect. And you can see why Aboriginal people in a less noisy society held them in reverence for as spiritual iconography. Not God itself, but a representation of that. So I take all that to heart. I'm a champion of it. I want to protect it. I want to protect the living trees, but I want to take advantage of the reclaimed stuff to make the best possible tool for making music, to express creativity and write a song, change the world. make the world a better place. I don't think this history would necessarily affect your decision in buying a guitar. The idea here is not for me to sell you a guitar ever, is to promote and help people understand the value of this resource. When I say resource, it sounds like we're going to eat it all up. And it's possible. There's twice as many people in the world today as there was when we started Santa Cruz Guitar Company, and we're using up more stuff, and we often don't know its provenance. But this can make you feel really good about your guitar with a redwood top. I talked about the sustainability of responsible harvest, taking old stuff. So let's go to the Aboriginal people, original people of Americas. As I said, they revered it. They didn't worship it, but it was part of their iconography that represented, the higher power. They used this wood, but they didn't cut a tree to get it. They would literally remove a plank from the tree and allow it to heal. Of course, they weren't making subdivisions and shopping malls and Walmarts to do that, but that's how much they thought about this. Seeing this, the forest in action, the redwood tree is resistant to fire, and it takes fire to pop the seed cone open for the seeds to regenerate. So it's so well adapted to nature, and as I said earlier, it's a symbiosis between these trees. I don't want to talk about them in human qualities, but it's pretty amazing to think that these trees do communicate, and they communicate out of altruism. They put their effort into helping the whole and each other rather than sustaining themselves. And this is what the Native Americans knew, and it just represented the whole do unto others aspect. So I'm not trying to ask you to share my reverence or the spiritual nature of what I have with redwood, but I do want you to know that's where our practices come from that reverence and respect. So when we make a guitar out of this stuff, it fits all those criteria. It's the best sounding stuff we can get, and as discussed, we use this piece of wood for the appropriate application. So I hope that dispels a lot of repeated, redundant myths about this stuff, and would help you to make a choice in your guitar. Sourcing these kind of woods today is challenging. It's difficult. It's expensive. And usually luthiers are buying way down the distribution chain where things have already been picked through and their choices are minimal. And some of the most respected individual elite luthiers have thought they don't like redwood because the sample they got wasn't appropriate. And in this discussion, we talk about the varieties of this wood, the desirability, if the wood is picked for the right application. Rather than thinking redwood is great for guitars in general, a particular piece of wood is going to be good for a particular kind of playing. And in that, we're too small to buy a ton of wood and pick out the good stuff for ourselves and sell the rest, but we do anyway. And we do it simply because we run on love and not money in these things. The cooperations with people that understand our cause and feel the same way, we work together, and these are people like Marvel Woods, where they have the same purpose really that we do in sustainability, respect for the habitat and the materials. And with that, we end up being able to go through a whole lot of wood to get what we want. And it's not that we sell the junk to other people, it's just we're small. I wasn't being corny when I talked about the company running on respect for others, paying forward, and just genuine love. I've become really dear friends with Jorge Ramos of Marvel Woods. And Jorge is our partner in not only the fulfillment of some of these woods we offer for sale, but also the acquisition. Jorge's family is from Guatemala, and we have great connections with South America in that regard. So Jorge's values reflect our own, and it's the perfect symbiosis for this. We're first and foremost guitar makers, not wood moguls, not mass movers of wood, but we need to go through a lot of wood to be able to get this quality of stuff that we need for your guitars. I'm really grateful for Jorge and Marvel Woods for our symbiosis and working together. I'm going to tell this funny story. Bob Taylor and I are really good friends. I love him, and he does a wonderful thing for people. He makes a really good, solid guitar in a price range that more people can afford than not, and the world's a better place through music. Our job is to make the most effective, inspiring tool for your creativity, and the cost is, who knows, but we're not limited by cost as we go into this. I joke with Bob Taylor. Taylor, when things are really, really good, can make up to 1,000 guitars a day. And we make the same amount of guitars, but it takes us about 4 or 5 years to get to that point. So our needs aren't as big. We don't need to buy in huge volume in order to fulfill our demand and to keep price down for a target. We can get the best there possibly is. Of course, that price passes on to the customer, but again, we're making the best possible tool for someone to express their creativity. Okay. A really, really important thing for builders. I would advise people to never, ever, ever use a flamed wood like this on a guitar top, because in general, the flame is apparent from the run out or the grain going in, out, which would create a perforation, and under string tension, this can literally pull apart. But with 55 years of experiment, trial, and error, I know the depth that we can accept in this movement of grain before we suffer compromising the structural integrity. And that's why this flamed redwood is extremely unusual and rare to get the integrity of structure and the beauty of this movement in it. So these are truly unusual pieces. You could buy flame redwood all the time, but man, if you don't know how to evaluate this, I would really steer clear of flame redwood. Our modal analysis, which measures this, will be available to other makers, and it will be open source. In the meantime, as always, I invite anybody who wants to reach out to me or test a piece of wood, let me know. Let's see if we can take care of that for you.